Gundam.tk presents Master Grade Gundam version 2.0 Titanium Finish. Hey, what's up again, everybody? It's Robert184, 2Rs2Bs from GundamReviews.net. As Char gets stood up here in the plates, and I'm taking a look. This is my wrap-up to the RX-78-2 Master Grade version 2.0 of the Granddaddy Gundam himself, with the bonus that this is the titanium finish, which makes it a little bit more expensive, a lot more shiny, and it's going to add a few more pros and cons to this kit. But anyway, here's my list of all the good and bad things, and if you go back about 700 videos ago of mine, I have already taken a look at this in SD, and you can see that at that point I had said that this was one of the best master grades, I think the best master grade I've ever built, and I wonder if, 4 years later, if it's still gonna stack up. So to kick things off with a few of the negatives first of all, the big complaint about this is that I absolutely love the fact that they're gonna give you a core fighter, and that the core fighter is going to transform, and that the core fighter can be inside the Gundam or outside the Gundam on display, which is just going to lead for a fantastic display, except the biggest issue is that when you do that, you're going to be losing some of the stability that you would be getting otherwise if you had it inside the chest. And that could have been easily remedied with Bandai giving us all of these plates. All they had to do was give you a big gray block on one of these gray plates, and you could have stuck that in and used it as a replacement when you choose to have the core fighter out on display. So for a few cents of bulky plastic, you could have had a much more secure Gundam, and you could have used all those connection points. Now you can get around that by putting the core fighter inside the chest, which is also going to work in terms of displaying ammo and things like that, but it's just an oversight that we've seen with Gundams in the past where they give you two options of the core fighter or the core block, and it should have happened with something like a Master Grade 2.0. Another issue is that every once in a while, I'd say on the inner frame, you're going to see a little bit of it exposed there, and sometimes that's a good thing, sometimes it's a bad thing, especially on the waist skirts, but with a bigger issue with the waist skirts is that they fall off at the drop of a hat. I've said that many times. You may have seen over the course of the videos that they do the side skirts, the rear skirts, the front skirts. They have a lot of flexibility. You can move the front ones up and down, and these back ones, because they're attached together on one mechanism, they seem to move in tandem. However, they are also going to fall off in tandem if you try to do anything too fancy with the legs themselves. In terms of the weapons, you are going to have a few so-so ones. First of all, the beam javelin is going to come in dull transparent, unless you're actually going to go paint that up or dip it fondue style. The bazooka, I always say this, Gundams are going to have issues with bazookas just because it's hard to get them up over the shoulders and in the hands. This one is going to work better than most, but it's still not going to work out perfectly, despite the fact that it's got this bending mechanism there. This part here just isn't quite large enough at the back to fit over the shoulder comfortably, and you are going to have to get some awkward pauses with that. One big issue for other people, this isn't an issue for me per se, but some people complain that the version 2.0 is too cartoony. Now there's an alternative. If you're willing to settle for a different inner frame, you can go get the 1 Year War version in the anime colors. Right out of the box, that one's going to look pretty impressive. But if you do like the version Katoki styling, or if you do like a more realistic one and lots of lining, this one is not going to be for you with its oversized hands and just a cartoony limbs, small shoulders, slender frame overall, and the big red parts under the eyes. I think that's going to be a turn-off for some. The next problem that's going to refer specifically to the titanium issue is that every once in a while you're going to have some problems with the weapons, and I'm talking about the beam javelin, which because it has this white layer of beautiful whatever shiny stuff that went on top to make this titanium, that I'm sure isn't real titanium, that it's not going to fit well into the manipulator, and you're going to have the same issues with the beam sabers. This one I'm hardly ever going to use, so it's not a big issue, but the beam saber should be used because you can do some awesome dome slicing and everything else. And anyway, it's just disappointing that that's not going to work without some sticky tack. In terms of the marks, it's not as bad as I thought. When I went through and I did the MS review, I hardly noticed the marks around there whatsoever. If you look for them, however, you are going to see them on the outside of the legs, down here. You can see them on the sides. You're really going to see it on the red and the blue and the yellow. The yellow, it's buried pretty well because it's always layered on top of something else. But the bottom of the feet are going to have some ugly marks on the inside and the outsides, and my biggest complaint is that they're going to be on the front of the shoulders. Once you know you're there, your eyes are going to go there. And another complaint is that because this is the 30th anniversary out in 2010, I wonder if mine has discolored over time, or if other people have had similar issues. But when I took this out of the box, my blue was a little bit rainbowy. It just looked like it had a little bit of an picture oil and water. And that's how it looks if you look at it up close. And that's the kind of thing that you don't expect in a kit of this price. The white looks good, the red looks good sprayed over large areas, the gold looks dull, but that blue is just not great. And the white can come across as a little bit inconsistent when it's sprayed into different areas. You can see that silvering lining effect. Every once in a while it looks good, but every once in a while there's a piece where it wasn't sprayed that well. And I did have a section of foot where the red was not sprayed consistently whatsoever. Now, was that 5 minutes of negatives for the Master Grade Gundam 2.0? Best Gundam ever, as I called it 4 years ago? Well, anyway, let's move on to the positives because there are a lot of them and I'll fly through these. First of all, the inner frame. I haven't built the perfect grade, but I'd love to hear from other people. Is this as good? Or is it 80% as good? Is it 90% as good for a fraction of the price? This came out quite a bit, almost a decade after the perfect grade. Anyway, when I put this together, I was just blown away that everything that was done previously in 1/60th can now be done in 1/100th form. Now, the big bonus for me about this kit is just the weapons. The bazooka's great with the white and the gray. The beam rifle has the super napalm for no reason whatsoever other than to have some great two-handed poses. The fact that you can move these all around, you can attach this and this to the back, you can put the shield on the back, you can have this extra beam javelin for no reason except for the fact that it's cool, and the Gundam hammer for all of its cartoony goodness. It's not going to work perfectly, but just the fact that they're throwing in all these bonuses make it feel special compared to some of the other Gundams that have come out earlier. We've seen most of these weapons, but not all, and it's just great to have them all in one pack, combined with the fact that you've got these beam sabers, which are just a little bit oversized, big pluses for all the weapons, and all the gimmicks built into them attaching everywhere. Something else that I'm a huge fan of, though, is just this core fighter. Yes, I complain that it should be a core block when you have it out on display, but the reason I complain about not having a core block is because I always want this out on display. The transformation for it is incredible, the fact that you can slide out the cockpit and still have the tail move with it. The wings do feel a little bit weak, but overall you've got all these colors in a very small area. It's going to look almost as good as the hard graph, and it's going to be a much, much smaller kit. And the fact that you've got a pilot, clear parts, I'm just very, very impressed with it and always want to have it out on display. The backpack is also going to be surprisingly solid, not something that I talk about outside of seed kits, but it's silver and you've got the plus here of the titanium of just the colors being a little bit better, but the gimmicks up here of the fact that you can move the beam sabers in and out and yet have all the parts and the attachment points protected is a big plus compared to some other kits. The shield is also going to look great thanks to the gimmicks. It's got that sliding part up here, it's got these gray parts down below. You can attach it onto the backpack as mentioned. It fits very, very well into the hand, snaps in very securely to the forearm. This part is going to slide all over the place. Put the beam rifle in there when you don't want to use it. Anyway, the shield, for something that just looks very old and cheesy and cartoony, is something that was very, very well created here in Master Grade form. The big positives, though, this is a kit that's incredibly fun to put together, thanks in no small part to the inner frame. It's the kind of thing where, like I said, I want to have two of them on display, one with the inner frame next to the Gundam just to show off. When people say, when you put these models together, is it fun? And then you show them the engineering of that inner frame, I think that's reason enough. The outside parts are just going to add to it. It's going to look deceptively simple on the outside, despite the fact that it's got all that great stuff on the inside. I did not mind putting this together for the second time whatsoever. I wonder for the people that have gone and built the G3 and everything else if you're tired of it after about 4 or 5 incarnations. But I'm not, and when you get into the most important issue, it's posable. You can pull off all sorts of poses, including all the famous ones from the anime, and they're going to help you out with that with the manual and the box showing off all of them. And then when you combine that with the fact that it's going to perfectly capture the power of the anime, because this anime and cartoony form of the version 2.0 is exactly what I think fans of the old school 70s cartoon want to see. If you want a newer version, they're out there, but if you want the old school, this one, combined with the posability and all the fact that you've got all these bonuses, means that my verdict is going to be unquestionably positive, especially with the titanium one. At the end of the day, the red looks great, the blue looks great, and the gold looks good, and that white body. I really am not a fan of the extra finish ones with the silver body, but these ones having the white on there, especially the Unicorn Gundam and this one here, I think is just fantastic, and I'd say that it's worth every extra cent because they do a good job with the initial design, which means when you cut it off and you have the num marks, 90% of them are going to be hidden, and because it's so lustrous everywhere else, your eyes are going to be distracted. Great kit, fun to put together, captures the anime, and the titanium version I'd say is worth the extra cost if you don't want to go ahead and paint up your own metallic versions. So overall, I'm very happy with this despite having it the second time. And in terms of just having, I'm not a big fan of variants in general, but to have this one as the granddaddy just catching all the attention with the eyes is something that I think I'm always going to be happy to have this on my shelf, capturing my eye and anybody else who looks at it. To the future, you know that we're probably going to be getting even more versions of the 2.0. They're still missing the Char version and a few other ones. And especially with Bandai moving more and more stuff online, they don't necessarily have to sell it retail, so that more and more color recreations are very, very likely. One thing that when I did my video 4 years ago, I said that I really wanted this with a clear outer frame. They've given us a couple ones with a smoky one and an all clear one, and a colorful clear one. So if you want to show off that inner frame and not buy 2 of them and have them on display, which seems like a little bit of a waste. You can do that because they've given you those options. But what about the inevitable version 3.0? If you take a look at the history of Master Grades, we've had so many RX-78-2s. Every 3 or 4 years, whenever they've come up with a new set of technology, and when I built the H1, I said, how cool is some of this when it gets put back down into the RX-78-2 as I was putting it together, despite the fact that the H1 isn't perfect. Anyway, it is inevitable, but you'd think that they would exhaust all the 2.0s before they try an inner frame. What about a gun cannon, though, so that we can get these core fighters interchangeable to go along with the gun tank? Anyway, everybody, that's just my impression. I'm a big fan of this kit. I'm a fan of the titanium version. What do you think about this kit? Are you tired of putting it together? Are you waiting for a 3.0? Is it the best one? I can't say that it's the best Gundam kit that I've built, I think, anymore. That has changed after 4 years, but it's still the one that made me really, really like Master Grades and not want to go anywhere else in terms of grades, because it does what a PG does for a much smaller scale and a much nicer price. Throw in the bonus of this shiny titanium, and I'm a fan. So why don't you let me know what you think? And as always, thanks for watching, everybody. This was an HD review, just wanted to catch up, and when I go back and watch those old reviews, lots have changed. But anyway, if you want to go check out the old one, why don't you go do that as well? Thanks for watching, everybody. Stay tuned for lots more reviews, new, old, and everything in between. Bye. Yeah, titanium's cool and all, says the Banshee, but what about under black light, where you're just going to have the white reflecting? But the cool part about these lights, I don't know if I ever showed you, is that it's got a regular flashlight, and yes, this guy's gonna shine.